The next item, under the direction of Dr. Stacy Dattery, our Chief Academic Officer, is the state assessment update. And welcome.
Well, thank you, President DeWitt, Interim Superintendent Eads, and members of the school board. I better get this thing up because there's just a few little things that you might want to see.
Thank you. This is an information item, so there won't be a motion necessary.
So I just would like to give you a quick update on our state assessment program. I shared some information as we went through the year last year, and then we presented an action item a few board meetings ago around assessment technology needs that we had. And so I just would like to share with you a little bit tonight on how that will be utilized and as we move into this assessment program this year. We are in the first full year of the new Colorado Measures of Academic Success, and there are several things going on around the state and the impact that that has locally as well, as late as what we even heard last week, though I don't have any additional information on that. But we do know that CMAS, as we fondly call it, is our state assessment program, and is a result of Senate Bill 212, or the CAP for K. There are several assessments that actually fall within that, and you've seen this, but there are several that I just want to quickly highlight. Students across all grade levels take these assessments that are in this chart throughout their years. Some are administered individually, others are group administered, and it depends on the type of data that is required as well as the age of the student. The first assessment that was given in this series was actually the Colorado Access, that is also referred to as WIDA. That is the English Language Learner Assessment, and we are currently actually in the midst of giving that assessment, K to 12. It is given in the month of January and through to the first week of February. It is given both individually as well as in small groups each year. Science, social studies, and school readiness are then the next set of assessments that are administered, and were administered actually last year for the first time. Science and social studies will be given in groups in an online environment, whereby school readiness is given, it's an individually monitored assessment of students in the kindergarten age. In the 2014-15 school year now, new assessments will be given for the first time in English language arts as well as math. These assessments are also given online, are group administered, and are given in grades 3 through 8 as well as high school. You have heard before, but I think it is important to understand that there are actually two series of assessments. There is the performance-based assessment that is given 75% of the way through the year, that will be given in March. And then the end-of-year assessment, which is given about 90% of the way through the year, and that is given in May. They are both combined together for a total summative score that we will receive following the summation of the assessments. So as I mentioned, this is the Colorado Access. Very quickly, we are in the third year of this assessment for our students. This is the English language assessment that we have to give to all of our second language learners. There are 6 different levels of assessing, from entering to reaching, and it is within 3 major components or language features. These assessments measure their reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills across all standards. Some are administered group as well as individual. To reduce, however, the burden of assessment in the schools, the assessment department has provided training to all of the teachers as well as to assistant principals, who then give that training to their teachers that are assigned to administer these assessments. In addition to that, an assessment sweep team of retired teachers comes together. They're trained by the assessment department on how to give the individual assessment of this Colorado Access. And they are deployed out into the schools, particularly in those schools that have high numbers of students, and where the schools request that additional support, we do provide that. We also provide, when requested, any kind of substitute teachers so that the teacher can be released, and classroom teachers or EL teachers can be released and administer that assessment through this month of January. So we do provide different levels of support based on need in the school as well as requests by the school leadership. And these are given to all of our students, kindergarten through middle school and on into high school. So, as I mentioned, CMAS for English Language Arts and Math will be given for the first time this year. And you can see that it is given in Language Arts and Math in grades 3 through 8, as well as high school. In Social Studies, it is given in grades 4, 7, and 12. And in Science, it's given in 5, 8, and 12. The assessment windows, as I mentioned, are in March and May. And for Social Studies, for the English Language Arts and Math, for Science, it is actually, and Social Studies for grades 4, 5, 7, and 8 will be given in April. 12th grade is administered in the following fall, and we gave that this past November to our 12th grade students for the first time. So there was some good news from the state that we received this fall, and I think amidst all of the things going on, I have not been able to share broadly that there was, based on the field testing results, so many districts and across the state and across the nation actually that are part of the PARC Consortia gave the field testing assessments, and through that they determined, PARC determined that they could actually reduce the number of sessions in order to still glean the information that they feel that they need in order to show that students know the standards at that particular grade level. So in grades 3 through 5, they did have 6 English Language Arts assessments, and it's now been dropped to 4. In grades 6 through 11, all the way through to high school, middle school and high school, they will also had 6 English language assessments, and that dropped to 5. And then in high school math, they had 6 sessions total, and they dropped that back to 4. So between the performance-based assessment and then the end of year, the combination of number of sessions, they've actually dropped in each of those areas across the different grade levels. So that should provide a little less intensity in terms of the amount of time that students will be taking those state assessments. I wanted to just be able to share with you, it's been a while since I've shared with you what some of these sample items look like, and I know we talked about this a little bit earlier in terms of what we all are privy to and aware of in terms of how our students might be assessed in this new assessment program. This is a 5th grade math sample item, and as you can see, I think the main thing to even get to glean from this is that it is all about fractions. Fractions used to be taught and assessed then in the 6th grade for many, many, many years, and in the new standards, and therefore then the assessment that follows that has been pushed to 5th grade. And you can see that it's not just a straightforward question. It is put in application in a problem-solving type of format in which they have to pick the right answer, and then they're often asked to apply it, which is down in Part A. You can see Part A in 5th grade, and then you can see that again in this 8th grade sample, where you can see that it's part, use this information there on the left side, use this information to answer Part A through Part D for question 24. So in one question, there are 4 different parts to this, and I put them in, and you all have this in your board backup as well, just to be able to give you an idea of the extent of which our students are being asked to learn this information and then apply that learning in different ways and kind of manipulate, if you will, their understandings in order to be able to answer multiple parts of a question. And then finally, I wanted to show you, this is parts B, C, and D, actually, on this slide. And then I wanted to be able to just share a little example, kind of right in the midway point of 7th grade English Language Arts. And in this example, you can really see that, and we've had some conversations about this, and certainly our teachers are doing, there's a lot of professional learning that we all engage in as adults in order to learn what does this look like at mastery level for students and at the 7th grade in this particular example. And it is really about being able to articulate their thinking among reading, and in this case actually 2 readings and a video, hence the reason for headphones that our students will all wear for the English language arts assessment, because they will actually watch and listen to video for different items. And then, based on that, in this particular case, they have to analyze in an essay format the strengths of the various texts in order to support their thinking around whatever the question might ask of them. It's also, our students are also asked to use textual evidence to support their ideas, so it's no longer just about what they might think, but they have to support their opinion and their understandings of what they've read based on this text, and be able to pick those things out and appropriately link what they understand with what they've read. And so that's just adds another layer of understanding and analysis on the part of our students. That's all the way through the grades, but you can see that it just kind of ratchets up in that understanding as the kids get older. So in order to prepare for the full spectrum of the assessments in an online environment, we have prepared our teachers and our students in this kind of rigorous academic work in many ways, including the technology usage, both of iPads, computer labs, various devices that the students have, so so it's not the first time that they're having to take this kind of an assessment. They're actually we're doing more and more of the instruction in that environment. In fact, with this last round of assessment, many of the principals and teachers were saying, we've got to do more of this. The kids weren't really agile, if you will, on the computer, and even in the Galileo assessment, which they're having to use the computer in some of those simulations. They're not able to necessarily manage that. So we've got to do more instruction in that way if that's the way they're going to be assessed. So in order to do that, as you know, District 6 OIT staff conducted a technological readiness inventory, and that was based on what the Colorado Department of Education shared with all districts around the technology specification guidelines. And we use that information as well as what we've learned from the online field testing to make the request of all of you, and which you approved, for the purchase of not only additional computers, but also the infrastructure that we would need in order to support that. So these computers have arrived, they're being prepared to be utilized in classrooms for both instruction as well as assessment. And in addition, OIT has been incredibly busy getting all of our buildings ready, installing access points, and the headphones have been purchased, and they are here and ready for the ELA side of the assessments that are required. So that gets us through many of the different assessments that are new to us. School readiness is another part of CAP for K legislation, and we implemented this for the first time 3 years ago in line with the expectations of implementation. We've been doing a gradual phase in over these 3 years. We chose Teaching Strategies Gold as the assessment. There was only one choice at the time. There are now two different choices, options for districts, and this is the typical one that most districts have gone with. It does provide, what does the school readiness assessment provide us? It's intended to be used to develop individual readiness plans that will inform instruction. It's about helping to support what that instruction looks like and what are the next steps of a young learner entering into school, not as a ready or not assessment, not whether or not they're ready to enter school, but just where are they and what do we need to do. So it's a pretty comprehensive assessment, if you will. It's observation-based, and the teachers have to gather individual data around the students. So it's not a given at a point in time type of assessment. It's really gathered over a series of all year. And then they enter that data at specific times throughout the year to Colorado Department of Ed. And so that's how that information is gathered throughout the year. Over the past two years, actually, it's important to also know this has changed recently, that as CDE has been guiding districts to implement this assessment and this observation protocol, they've gotten many requests from district leaders and kindergarten teachers to think about the magnitude of this assessment. Although it gives our teachers a lot of good information, it's, as you can imagine, pretty time intensive. And when you have 2 half-day programs, as many schools and districts do across the state of Colorado, you're looking at anywhere to 40 to 50 children that you're doing that kind of an assessment on. We've been very, we've really tried to hold back on our kindergarten, teachers for that very reason, because there's a lot that we ask of them to do. And we're grateful to hear that there's actually been some flexibility as of late provided by the state, because we do have to report on this to the state, so there's only so much that you can do without this flexibility. So we're grateful that they came to districts and said, as of the 2015-16 school year for the following year, districts had an array of about 5 different things that they could choose in order to be a little more flexible with their implementation. So it's kind of based on where they were at already in their implementation, that districts needed choices and options for that flexibility. We have chosen to actually combine 2 of those options, 2 of the 5. And so rather than giving all 9 domains, so some of you may remember I came and I shared with you there were 9 domains and a whole boatload of objectives. We will only implement 6 domains, and they are the have-to domains. And there we've already give language, literacy, and math, and then we will add social, emotional, physical, and cognitive. We have to, that's part of the minimum, and so we will do the minimum of those. So we will do 6 instead of the 9. The other option that we had is to not give and monitor all students, only students who are not already at that level. So in 3 of those 6 domains, we will only progress monitor and continue to gather data on students who are not already at that level of readiness. So we will cut back on the amount of time that it takes in order to gather all of that information and thus report on that, because there is, once you gather that data, then they have to report on all of those students. So there has been that cognitive recognition on the part of both the state, and then we were able to do that. And I think that'll make the most sense for our teachers given where we're at with implementation. The final part of CAP for K is, actually, READ Act is a separate, completely separate assessment and series of assessments, and then and it's legislated separately than the CAP for K. But it goes in line with what we're doing. And just to give you a brief update, this is, as you're aware, has an early literacy focus. It's about K through 3 and identifying any students who have a significant reading deficiency. There are 2 assessments that are required through the READ Act that you must give. One is an interim assessment, and then if students are found not to, or to have that significant reading deficiency based on the interim assessment, then you have to give a diagnostic assessment. That's new to us this year. We had not been in total compliance with that up until this year. And that is the Dibbles Deep that we chose as our diagnostic assessment. That is a more time-intensive assessment, and we had talked about that earlier, and that is the one that can take upwards of 20 minutes per student. It's not for every student. It is only for students with a significant reading deficiency, but if you have a large number of students, and that would be those students that typically are at that intensive level that we talked about earlier with your data. Those are the students, the number of students that they're looking at assessing. So it can take a considerable amount of time if you add that up. The good news is it's only done a couple of times out of the year, but still the time that takes is, there is some challenge inside of that. What that does is it does help the teachers to know a little deeper as to why the student is struggling and what can the teacher then do in order to address their individual needs. So the outcome of that is positive, but there is some time with that. And part of the time that it takes too, I think we have to recognize, is that it's new. And so anytime there's something new, there is a learning curve for us as well. So we're working to support our teachers in that learning as well as the implementation. So finally, as we think about all of these assessments and this newness for the adults, there's also newness for that on the part of our students and thus our parents. And so being mindful of the communication with our families in regard to these assessment changes is also on the minds of teachers as well as our principals. So some of the ways in which we are supporting this understanding is helping to put information up on our district website, on our Learning Services website. We share that information with our principals, and as of late, the Colorado Department of Ed has also come out with some new resources that just help districts share with families on a broad scale the changes, and so families can have some better answers. It's also important to keep in mind that parent-teacher conferences, our teachers are doing a good job of just having some of those one-on-one conversations with parents in that venue, as well as principals doing school newsletters, classroom teachers doing those classroom newsletters. And we will keep our principals, continue to keep our principals, assistant principals through the monthly meetings that we have with them apprised, as well as through our principal lines. So communication is key, being able to share that information and then have ways for parents to be able to ask questions and get the information they need to feel comfortable about this is important. So I will just end by sharing with you that as we get more information from the Colorado Department of Education, so will we share with you and with the rest of our internal stakeholders, and with some of the latest decisions. We will certainly, at the state board level, we will certainly stay tuned and see what that might mean at the local level.